Welcome, everyone. Hello, hello. I'd love it if everyone would let us know where you're from in the chat. Maybe where you teach, just so we can get a sense of our group. All right, welcome. Welcome, Jasmine, aspiring teacher. Are you in grad school right now?
I'm not. So I had a career as an aerospace engineer.
Nice.
I left my job a couple of years ago and was exploring what next and discovered anthropology and really love it. So yeah, I'm sort of figuring out what path I need to take to get into teaching.
Oh, great. Well, this is a great group in terms of networking and sharing ideas. We're all very open and love to share. Some of us have been here in SAC for, well, 15, almost 20 years. And once they suck you in, you just can never get back out. This group of folks actually helped me, Ariane's laughing, helped me get a full-time job because I met the person who served on a hiring committee, on field trips at a conference through SAC. And she told me, get your resume, your CV ready because we're hiring in San Diego.
Where were you originally from, Laura? Are you from San Diego?
Well, I grew up in LA, but I've been in San Diego so long that I basically am like a San Diegan.
Were you in San Diego when the job position became available?
Which job position?
The one you're in.
Yeah. Yes, I was already here.
Okay.
Yeah.
So for you, you were just staying where you were.
That's right. And I was pretty lucky.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right.
Do most people kind of go elsewhere? Do people go far away to get jobs, or does it just vary?
I
did not.
I think it varies for folks who are in four-year colleges and universities. Certainly they're maybe more willing to travel, I think. And for community college folks, I feel like we often will find a place in our area, right? Isabel, did you find a spot where you were, or did you move for your job?
Oh no, I was incredibly fortunate. I found a spot across town. I graduated from the University of Illinois at Urbana-Champaign, and I'm still in Champaign-Urbana.
Awesome.
Yeah,
I had to travel to the next county because I started as an adjunct in here, and that anthropologist is still in her late 50s or early 60s. And I thought, oh, she's never going to retire. So the guy in the next county was 90 and he did finally retire. I was able to get this job.
This is what you have to look forward to. Anthropologists work until they die.
Yeah, the guy I replaced, right?
I think I aspired to.
Hi, Sean.
Hi. Sorry, I got someone, Isabel, off.
Oh, that's okay. I was also saying that, the guy who retired, whose position I filled, was in his late 80s when he retired. He was like 86, 87. Yeah.
Let's not scare them. Why don't we get to the good stuff? All right. So we have a series of slides for you. And we're going to try to work through the slides rather quickly. This is being recorded and we'll share the recording later. So you could decide whether you'd like to be on or off camera. Also, make sure you write down your questions or take screenshots of things that you'd like to ask or like to remember. So we'll go through the slides. We're hoping to do that in about 35 minutes. And then we're going to open it up to conversation and questions, Q&A. Okay. So I'll start by introducing myself. And let's see, I'm going to minimize this. All right, so I'm Laura Gonzalez. I teach in San Diego at Miramar College. I have been a full-time faculty at Miramar College for about 16 years. I'm also the professional development coordinator. So in my load, there's 5 classes. 2 of those classes I have released in order to do professional development work, which is actually a lot of fun. Lynn?
Hi, I'm Lynn Swartley O'Brien. I am, my pronouns are she and her. I teach at Montgomery County Community College, which is in Pennsylvania, southeastern Pennsylvania, outside of Philadelphia, in the suburbs around Philadelphia. And yeah, I'll just leave that there.
Yeah, and I'm Isabel Scarborough. I am full-time faculty at Parkland College in East Central Illinois. And I've been program director for anthropology for the past 9 years since I started teaching here. And for the past year or so, I've been department chair for social sciences and in several search committees.
Great, thank you. All right, so we wanted to start by giving you an overview of the process. And each college, each district has a slightly different process, but they're all relatively similar, right? So an overview would be the first thing that you would do, whether or not you are already teaching part-time, would be to submit a written application to the college, generally to the HR department. If your written application is ranked highly by the hiring committee, which will generally be a group of maybe 5 to, in my college, actually up to maybe 10 people, and they rank each question on a series of 0, or on a scale from 0 to 5. So you can either get a 0 or 1 ranking on a question. Oh, sorry, it's 0 to 4. So 0 or 1, or a 3 or a 4 on your question response. There's no wishy-washy 2, because then we'd probably just write 2s on everybody's, right? So it's either you have not really answered the question, or you have fulfilled the requirements of the question. So those numbers are then tallied. And for that reason, it's very important to write to the question so that each question can be scored highly, right? If your numbers, after they are tallied, are above a somewhat arbitrary break, but generally, we try to bring people in for interviews that are maybe, the first 10 or 12 folks, then we'll bring you in for an interview. These interviews are often very structured, very formal. We ask the same questions as in your written application, or somewhat similar. You are not allowed, in my district, you are not allowed to talk back as a committee member. I'm not allowed to talk back to you. I just have to listen to what you say and write some notes. So it's a very odd, not comfortable process. So you have to go in knowing that there's not going to be a lot of frivolity. Be sure to say everything from your written application again, because they cannot score you based on your written application in the interview. So you can't say, well, I talked about that in my written application, right? You don't want to do that. Then we score you again. The top maybe 3 people come in for a second interview, which is a smaller interview, generally with the president of the college and a few other administrators and the chair of the department. These are less formal in the case of my college, and you'll have a chance to talk more openly and less formally in that interview.
Okay, this is me. So once you have gone through that first part of the process and you have this application packet that you're going to send in to human resources, um, this is usually an academic CV, your cover letter. Oftentimes we ask for a teaching philosophy and letters of recommendation. And something that I wanted to emphasize that applies to all of these materials, right? There's actually 3 criteria in the search committees that I've been in that really stood out to us. I really don't need to say this, I think, but community colleges are very teaching focused, very teaching centered. So of course, you do want to make sure that teaching is front and center on your academic CV, that you really highlight that on your cover letter. But more importantly, we want to get a sense that you have actually done some teaching or thought about teaching. We get a number of graduate students in the last search committee that we were in who talked about being teaching assistants or TAs. Well, you need to tell me more than that, because if you're a TA and, and I was one in grad school, oftentimes you're just a glorified grader, right? That you really get some chance to be in the classroom and talk to students, that you lead discussion questions. And actually last year we had a candidate in psychology who was successful. He has a job. He has a full-time job in our department, and he didn't have that, but he managed to very savvily deploy other teaching experiences. For instance, he talked about volunteer work he had done for years, teaching, volunteering with people with English as a second language, and working in homes, and teaching in different venues, and in instruction, teaching and learning with people from different backgrounds. And that really struck us as something that was very useful. He was able to tell us this. Another thing that I would say you should emphasize, right, is this idea of interdisciplinarity. And it's a big word to basically mean that in many community colleges, and we were saying this before we came on, I am the only full-time faculty in the anthropology program. There is no such thing as an anthropology department. There are no anthropology majors. You have students who will be taking anthropology introductory courses who will be transferring them to the 4-year institutions. And there might be a program or not. You might get an associate's or not, depending on the community college. So you will be surrounded by geographers and sociologists and psychologists and historians, etc., right? And you have to show us that you can be collegial and you can actually, that you find this interdisciplinary experience enriching. The last thing I would point out here is this idea of community engagement. Community college students, as again, I'm probably preaching to the choir here, right? But as we all know, usually community college students are commuter students. They don't live in dorms. They don't have that typical college experience. So you need to think of this and think a little broader, I would say, beyond the discipline, beyond anthropology. And we as anthropologists are good at doing this. And think of how you could engage those students in the community where they are embedded, right? They will be holding jobs. They will be they will be the people that are surrounding you in the community, is what I wanted to say. And the last thing here, and yeah, that's fine, was about the teaching philosophy. And as faculty chair, I can tell you that oftentimes the faculty evaluations build on the teaching philosophy. And this is one of the things that search committees really look at closely, sometimes more often than the cover letter. And we can go on to the next slide. Sorry, Laura. Once you have gone past the presenting that wonderful packet and you are now in that first, maybe in that second round of interviews, oftentimes committees will ask you to have a teaching demonstration. And these are a little bit awkward. Mine had a very strange, what I found was kind of like very discomfiting, a strange audience, in the sense that I had to teach a class to the faculty and my search committee members who were role playing as students. So this, I've heard of this in other community colleges as well. So think of your audience when you're looking at that teaching demonstration. Ask questions. Who will the audience be? Will I be doing this teaching demonstration in front of a regular classroom? Or will it be a lecture, a guest lecture, where you'll have students and faculty and staff coming into? Or will it be to different faculty? Ask about the topic. Sometimes they will tell you, you will be guest lecturing in our Anthropology 101 class. Here's the chapter from the textbook. Off you go. Sometimes they will ask you to pick a topic and tell us about your research or your work. So think about all of these things. And finally, the format might vary in this day and age. You might be asked to give I've seen everything. I've seen faculty being asked to pre-record a lecture, a 15, 20-minute lecture, and upload it on YouTube. I've seen faculty having to give a lecture on Zoom, and sometimes they had to do both. They had to actually deliver a lecture in front of an audience, and at the same time that was being streamed for people on Zoom. So think about all of these things. Think about what format it'll be in, the topic, and the audience. And these are questions you need to hopefully ask of your search committee, and be prepared for all this is what I wanted to say about the teaching demonstration. Of course, we want something engaging and fun, but that goes without being said, I think. Finally, in this era in which everybody had to pivot online, higher education is full of this, and where it looks like there is no looking back, and we're going to continue delivering a lot of material online. And a testament to that is that we're holding this virtual conference right now. That I would strongly recommend that you do a little bit of research and try to figure out what kind of modalities or instruction modalities the institution that you're applying to will be using. So I basically listed the 3 main ones here. And I can tell you in Illinois, right, we have dozens of community colleges, and the Illinois Community College Board meeting that I was at last week, it was actually overwhelming, the different ways in which different institutions will be going back to the classroom or sort of going back on campus in the fall. So look at that is what I would suggest. And you could be looking at asynchronous online teaching, which is basically your students will log on to a learning management system such as Canvas or Blackboard or Brightspace, Desire to Learn, and they will be doing the assignments in their own time. And you will never see the students, but you will engage with them through giving very detailed feedback on their papers, etc. It could be synchronous online, meaning that you will have to teach them on Zoom or Teams or what have you, and have a set time, have a set scheduled time to teach them in, or something that is happening at some schools, which I don't know how pedagogically sound that is again, this flex mode. And by flex, many schools mean that this has to be flexible for the students, not for the faculty. So you're actually providing everything. You are speaking to, you will have set times on campus, and you're recording your lectures so students can be flexible about the mode of instruction. They can come to campus if they wish to, or they can actually look at your lectures asynchronously, or watch you giving the lectures on Zoom. Will you stream them online? So this is not to, I guess, confuse or overwhelm you, but just something that we need to be aware of in this day and age, and something that has cropped up in our search committee discussions. Thank you.
Thanks, Isabel. Hi, it's Lynn O'Brien. I just posted these sample questions for you. I was on literally last week a search for public health. I did change the questions a little bit to anthropology, but truthfully, these are similar types of questions that we would expect. And I have 2 of them. This is background, and as Laura already mentioned, you need to restate what your background and what your educational experiences is, especially with people are going to review your education, but and they're going to review your CV before you come in, but it's always good when they have you face to face to remind them how well qualified you are. So all of these things are important about restating everything you've already written down, your teaching experiences, your qualifications, all of these questions that we, as Laura also mentioned, we have to go through HR department before we're even allowed to ask them, and we have to stay on task. If you want to go beyond the questions in your answer, you're able to do that. But as a committee member in the first round at my college, we have to stick to the set number of questions for every single person we choose to interview. So these kinds of questions, though, I think give you a good background to sort of think about it. And we're going to share these so you don't have to keep them. Do you want to go to the next set of sample questions? So the first one was a little bit about your background and what makes you an appealing candidate. This section is specifically about teaching. As we already mentioned, if you're interviewing at a community college, it's all about teaching. It's not about your research. I'm not saying you shouldn't talk about your research at all. You should talk about your research and how it influences your teaching and how you incorporate your research into your teaching. I think my students love to hear stories about fieldwork and stories about being an anthropologist, but it has to be only relevant to the teaching. I mean, I know I don't teach my dissertation to anybody. I had one student actually buy it. So anyway, this is the second round, asking specific questions about how a teacher you are. And I'm going to get into a little bit more. I think actually Laura's going to talk a little bit more about teaching on a later slide. One thing I probably have already picked up is that you have to be passionate about teaching. We certainly are all passionate about teaching. And if you're going to be at a community college and you want to be hired at a community college, you have to be passionate about teaching, because that's what we do, and it's part of our identity. And I think it's part of what makes community college just rock. Okay, so let's go right into it. Be passionate about the community college. One of the questions that I regularly have asked, or when I've been on a search committee, is what's the mission of the college? So you should know what the mission of the community college is and understand why community colleges are important to your area. And just, that kind of stuff is right there on the community colleges, on their web pages and things like that. And the second bullet, know your role as an educator. This has already been brought up a little bit, but like my other colleagues, I'm the only anthropologist on campus. I don't even have adjuncts at this moment because enrollment's down, so I'm teaching everything. Because of that, I'm always happy when I get a student come along who wants to be an anthropologist, who wants to study anthropology. But you know that 95% or more of my students are going to be computer scientists or psychologists or this one. So when you say know your role as an educator, I really meant that I understand that my role on the community college campus is not necessarily trying to teach the next generation of anthropologists. It's actually trying to teach kind of broader issues. So for example, if I can teach my students about multiculturalism, or I can teach them to appreciate and understand other cultures, I really feel like that's my role on the community college campus. I'm not turning out anthropologists, and I'm not saying, hey, I have some anthropologists, yay. I have some archaeologists, and I have a student who just emailed me about going on and studying at Villanova in anthropology. Love those students just as much as I love my other students, but all my other students, I love them just as much, and I really am teaching for them even more so, I think. And that's what I mean by know your role as an educator, because you should understand that that's what your position is going to be at a community college, and just lean into it. You're not a specialist anymore, right? Lean into your conduit for anthropology to the masses. And, that's a great thing. And just embrace that role, because I remember when I was in graduate school, I was all about my research and about my little area of expertise in which I knew everything. And then I wanted to tell everything about all that I knew. And now my role is just, wow, look at this great field of anthropology and all the ways and things we can explore with it in this perspective. And I really loved all the wonderful presentations going on so far at this great SACCFest here. but just, lean into that role as an educator in a broad sense. Be prepared to explain why you want to teach at a community college, and make sure you really articulate why you want to be at a community college. Because I've never sat on a faculty search committee where we hired anybody who didn't come across of really wanting to be at a community college specifically. And I know I authentically came that way. I was an adjunct for 3 years prior to being hired. And I fell in love with the community college that I was teaching at. And I was so happy when a community college position opened and I could apply for it. So for me, it was very authentic to say I wanted to be at a community college because I connected with community college students because of the way my life had sort of gone off kilter and back on kilter and this and that. I felt like I connected with my students and I had empathy, and I think that really helped a lot. Okay.
I think this is me. Yeah. Thanks, Lynn. So many good points there. Absolutely. So I just wanted to focus on something that, everyone else has focused on, which is to be passionate about teaching. And, like Lynn said, you are now, moving from being sort of the royal member of your own empire, to like, you are a servant to all students everywhere, right? What the committees really want to see is that you are first and foremost a teacher. One thing that is something that, I was never taught to do, but later on, once I was hired, I was asked to write this out, was to create a teaching philosophy. And, your teaching philosophy, you should have this articulated in your mind, right? What is it about teaching, and especially teaching at a community college, that is important to you? What are your goals as a teacher at a community college? I love my job, and I think most of us do, right? If you're a member of SAC, it kind of goes without saying that that you love your job, or that you love your subject, and you want to be more involved in the community college or in the teaching experience, because we have a lot of members who are not community college teachers as well, but who are really devoted to teaching. And one of the things that I love about my job is the fact that teaching at a community college is not just about teaching. It's about empowering students from minoritized backgrounds, disenfranchised students. It's about caring really for them. Sometimes in class, I've had students tell me at the end of a semester, Professor G, you're the only person that ever asked me how I was. And sometimes they'll tell you things like, and I know that my colleagues have these same experiences, they'll tell you things like, I went through some really difficult times with my mental health. I was questioning whether I wanted to end my life, things like that. I mean, our students go through it. And, just knowing that you were going to, look me in the eye and talk to me and respect me. And I'm not trying to toot my own horn. I'm just saying that as an educator in a community college, you have this beautiful gift to give to people, to show them their value and their worth. And it can really change the course of their life. And that's what I love about my job so much. And so, of course, I'm like the advisor to the LGBTQ club as an ally. And I work on the food pantry and, basic needs like, for students who are dehoused, or students who, need showers. My teaching role expands so much more. Teaching is like this much of what I do, and so much else of what I do is supporting students in all of these equitized ways. So I wanted to make sure that that was clear. And then lastly, show that you're actively engaged in learning about teaching. So on your application, in your interview, talk about teaching philosophies and teaching like pedagogical research or andragogical research. What do we do about equity? What is equity? What is it to create a belonging, a space for belonging for students? What is it to create a welcoming space for students? How do we do that? How do we use data, that, tell us something about our students, which students are succeeding, which students are not succeeding, in a way that informs what we do in the classroom. So think about those things as well. And the more that you talk about, your knowledge of teaching, that also comes across very well.
Okay, so this slide came about because one thing that sometimes I know I was like this when I was first on the job market. It's hard to get away from talking about ourselves, because what Laura was just saying, the focus is all about student success, and you need to pivot now to student success when you come into an interview. It should be in your letters, it should be on your application, but particularly when you come to talk to when you have an interview and you sit down to speak to the committee, because you're speaking to other faculty usually, and we understand that that it's all about student success at community college. You're also often going to be asked about, what the barriers might be that you imagine students would face, and Laura just talked about that there, making sure that that's into your teaching philosophy, but also at the very least just recognizing the what are the barriers to success in your area that you're coming to. Try to find out, and maybe you won't have a chance to find out, but at least be open to talking about it. So what type of community is it that this community college serves? If you can do a little background research, that's always a good thing. Be prepared with examples of how you prepare students to succeed, right? Don't be surprised if you ask you a question about, how have you helped students to succeed? Can you give an example of an instance when a student came with you with a problem and you were able to help them in some ways? These are the type of, again, student-focused questions that you would absolutely expect at a community college interview, which is so very different if you interview at a state college or a four-year institution, or a degree granting institution with graduate students. I've been on many search committees now, and we don't ask any questions about research. None, zero, right? It's all about teaching, and it's all about the students, and it's all about launching them, which is fabulous for the students. So you just have to be prepared for it. That's very different type of interview than if you've gone through the gauntlet at the AAAs. I did. I went through the gauntlet at AAAs, and I even had shortlist interviews, and then I left academia for 5 years. Eventually, I got a postdoc, but I left academia for 5 years, and then I came back to community college it was just fabulous for me. But I had to sort of change my life to be a good community college teacher, and I don't think that you have to. We're here to tell you that if you want to teach at a community college, you should know then that it's all about the students and all about making sure that they have success. It's not about you anymore or your research.
Kind of like when you become a parent, right? It's not about you anymore.
Yep.
All right. So, so I also wanted to to emphasize the fact that often anthropologists are coming in as the only anthropologist in their department, right? Lynn, Isabel, and I are the only full-time anthropologists in our department. And so unless the job announcement specifies, we're looking for someone to teach bioanth, or we're looking for someone to teach, cultural, or whatever it is, often preference is given to folks who can teach multiple courses, because especially if you're the only anthropologist, they want to know that you can teach two or more of these courses. I can teach cultural and bioanth, but I need to bring an adjunct faculty member in to teach archaeology. We don't offer linguistic anthropology or four fields courses. So we offer cultural, bioanth, a bioanthro lab, and archaeology, right? So if you can get experience teaching another course besides the one that you are trained in, besides the field that you're trained in, that can really help, boost your desirability. All right, I'm gonna move on there. Lynn, you're muted.
I don't know why that happened. Okay, so what Laura just said segues right into about the program, because one of the things for me, I got hired because I was a jack of all trades by the time I got hired, and in 3 years, plus what I had done as a grad student as well, I had taught many, many different types of courses. I had already taught biological anthropology, and I had cultural anthropology, and I think that was a turning point because not many students had already taught biological and cultural. That's a one there. But I think what my dean tells me that helped clinch it for him was, I said to him at our interview, well, why don't you have archaeology? I think you should have archaeology too. And he was just like, oh my goodness, I love a go-getter, right? And of course I had to do archaeology, and I love teaching archaeology. My dissertation, I studied archaeologists, so I was ready to teach them, teach about what they did as well. So definitely having a broad background is ideal if you're going to teach at a community college, because you're going to teach probably every intro course that they have. And it doesn't mean you're never going to teach an upper level course, but it's a lot dicier. At my college, I was able to introduce 2 new courses. When I got there, there was nothing. There was intro to physical anthropology and intro to cultural anthropology. That's all they had. So I introduced archaeology, and I introduced magic, religion, and witchcraft, and I introduced environmental anthropology. At this point, magic, religion, and witchcraft has become a popular elective, and I teach it a couple times a year. Environmental anthropology, I have yet to get to run. So that's what happens. And that's probably closer to my own background with the environmental stuff, but I don't know why I can't hook into anybody's imagination. I tried, so that's just the way it is. But, understand what's going on at the college, understand, as we already said, your role as probably the only anthropologist on campus. Think about, and that leads to the last bullet, what leadership expectations will be on a full-time anthropologist. I was definitely ready for that kind of leadership role by the time I got hired full-time. I understood and was ready to take on the mantle of being the head of, it's not a department, but I'm the head of anthropology. So when anything about anthropology comes up, it's on me to be the leader and to take the reins.
So going off what Lynn said about being ready to be a leader, another thing that you are expected to do, and if you're teaching as an adjunct faculty member, you already know this, but you're expected to do committee work, right? And so I was trying to think of other things that if you engage in them as an adjunct faculty member, they are really helpful for your application, because you will need to engage in these things once you become a contract faculty member. And so seeing that as a part-timer, you were willing to spend some of your time engaging in some of these things, even if you don't get compensation for it, which, you know, is very rare. That really shows them that you understand that teaching at a community college is not just about teaching, right? My four-year university colleagues and I laugh, because I say, well, you know, I have a regular load. And they go, oh yeah, I have kind of a regular load too. They say I teach 2 classes in the fall and 3 in the spring. And then I do research. And I'm like, are you kidding me? You know, full load for us is generally 5 courses. Plus on top of that, we have committee work. And, you know, we need to engage in all of these other things. So some of the things that look really good on an application besides committee work would be DEI, which this is a initialism that we use in California very often, but it's diversity, equity, and inclusion, or DEIA, diversity, equity, inclusion, and anti-racism. And for California, at least, this is, it's really important to talk about diversity. And I believe it's going to be important in any community college you go to, because as we've all been saying, you know, these are some of the most marginalized students that are in college, right? We have students with, you know, with multiple, you know, intersecting marginalized identities. So we have to be able to speak to that and to act, you know, to know how our teaching practice and our curriculum and our syllabus. And if you're interested in syllabi, come to my little plug, come to my session tomorrow, Equitizing Your Syllabus. But like, how do all these things help students succeed, right? From an equity-minded approach. Learning outcomes, right? So if you are, you know, involved in your department tracking student learning outcomes, that's a good thing to put on your application. Or engaging in program review, right? Every couple of years, your program, my program is Anthropology. Our program goes through a review process where we sort of assess how we're doing. We put in our goals and our needs. Nobody really likes doing this at my college, at least, because it's, you know, it's not compensated and it's extra time. And we have yet to really engage in the kind of work that we need to in order to make it super meaningful. I know we'll get there, but if you could engage in that work in some way, right? Get on the program review committee, work on program review with your full-time faculty as a part-timer. This also looks really good because it shows that you're willing to, you know, sacrifice yourself basically to volunteer as tribute. All right. So that's the end of our slides. Wow, we got through. We would really like to open it up to any kind of questions, any stories that you'd like to tell us, anything you would like to ask about particular experiences that you've had. We're open, and you can put them in the chat, or you can raise your hand, and as the host, I can call on you. We also have these additional resources that once we post this, you can click on these links and find some more resources. So I'm gonna stop share. Why do we always need to say that? Like, I can just stop sharing, right? Well, I'll say, I'm gonna stop sharing now. Like, yeah, you know I'm gonna stop sharing because I'm stopping sharing. Anyway, sorry.
I think it's part of being instructors. You're showing students what you're doing, right?
Right.
And the next thing we will do.
All right. Does anyone have any questions for any of us?
Everyone's ready to go get jobs.
Giovanni.
Hi, can you guys hear me? Okay, cool. I was just wondering if you could touch on teaching philosophy a little bit more, because you said be prepared with your teaching philosophy. I kind of know what that means to me, but what would you want to be hearing more specifically, like specific concrete examples?
could I address that a bit? I think that we would like to, you know how we've been like talking, a big thread, I think, throughout the conference has been this thing of storytelling, rather than read all of these like sentences that sound almost trite, right? About pedagogical techniques and the kind of techniques you use in the classroom and that kind of thing. I would like to hear more about your personal experiences as a teacher, and even if it's not as a teacher, as a learner, maybe, and what that has, how that has inspired your teaching. So that's what I want to be able to see, that there is that passion in teaching by looking at a very specific example that you bring from your own experiences. It's very anthropological if you think about it, almost ethnographic.
Yeah, I don't have pedagogy in my teaching philosophy, and you know, I wasn't trained. I was trained as an anthropologist. I wasn't trained in education. But I think for my teaching philosophy, I wrote a lot about what I mentioned about my role as a teacher on campus. I talk about diversity and inclusion and bringing that into the classroom. And that's, for me, that's my teaching philosophy. And then, you know, how to engage with students to, you know, bring that home, so to speak. But yeah, I remember I didn't actually write a teaching philosophy to get my job. We don't require it, but I did need a teaching philosophy for when I went for my first promotion. Well, in every promotion actually. So that's when I really thought about it the most, when I was going up for my first promotion, and yeah, I got promoted. So.
And the idea, I think, at least, you know, as department chair, your teaching philosophy changes through the years, right? We want to see kind of that evolution of your teaching philosophy.
Yeah.
Other questions? Jasmine, are you just so overwhelmed?
No, it's really interesting for me to hear, because for my engineering degree, I went to a 4-year university and the teaching was terrible. Like, I had terrible teaching professors. And the past year, I've been taking classes at DVC to get prereqs done to apply for a master's. The teaching is amazing. Like, I've never experienced such good educators. So it's interesting to hear you say that's what they put the emphasis on, because it shows. And I think, why didn't I do this the first time around? Because the teaching is much better. But my question is pretty basic. So if I wanted to teach at a community college, would I have to, is it enough to do a master's, or would I have to go on to do the PhD?
It's enough to do the master's.
Yeah. Oh, go ahead, Lynn.
I was going to say, the best thing you can do, Jasmine, is get your master's and start teaching at a community college as an adjunct, right? Because I can't imagine, we haven't hired anybody who didn't have a few years of community college, hopefully community college teaching experience. That's number one, is if you have community college teaching experience, we're like, you're already going to the top. And if you were a community college student at my college, that always helps too. So I would say get your master's and start teaching. And then if you, because you love your subject, want to continue with your doctoral work, hey, you know, that's great. But as soon as you can start teaching, just start teaching.
Yeah, I don't know how it is in other states, but at least for us, it's you can have a master's in anthropology or a master's in a related field, such as sociology or what have you, but you have to have 18 graduate credit hours in anthro. So
I was just going to say also, remember the scale that I was talking about, 0, 1, and then can't give someone a 2, and 3 and 4 as a ranking for each of the questions, right? So we have to assess you. I don't really know anyone who gives a person with a PhD, because that's one of the questions we need to rank on. Does the candidate have the required education level, which is a master's for a community college? We never give people more credit for a PhD, because For me, PhDs are a little suspect. And I'll tell you why. Because I'm not sure, unless it's proven through the rest of the application, I'm not sure that that person really wants to teach in a community college. I sometimes think, are they just using us as a stepping stone to get to a four-year school later? So it doesn't, I don't let it alter my perception of the person's application. But what I do want to see, if you have a PhD, is that you're really committed to community college teaching, and you're not just sort of using us as a stepping stone to get another job. And if anyone has,
I think that can be demonstrated,
absolutely,
Laura.
yeah,
because I was a PhD, and I think coming right out of college, I never would have gotten a community college job when I was graduated. But then, like I said, life hit me and sent my life this way. And that's when I kind of circled back and came to community college. And all of a sudden I had like this epiphany that these students, that's what their whole lives are. They didn't have the storybook. I went to college, I got my master's, I got my PhD, then I got my teaching job at the university like it was supposed to be. But you can definitely still convince people that a PhD. And I think there are some places that the emphasis on having a PhD is, in some fields, is becoming more, but.
I was saying it might just be a reflection on the market. I think
Yeah, the market.
we're getting more and more PhDs applying to community colleges because maybe they're discovering that it's a great place to be.
Yeah.
Giovanni?
Yeah, one last thing that I had a question on is that you sort of glossed over, you had some grading beyond tests and essays. And I know what I do, but I would like to maybe a little bit more clarification on what you would want to sort of hear in an interview or from an interviewee.
Does anyone remember saying that? Do you
Wasn't
remember who
mine,
said
so
it, Giovanni? Do you remember who said it?
No, I do not. It was just on somebody's PowerPoint. It said, what do you do to assess students beyond simple tests and essays?
Oh, you know what?
That's what it was.
That's a good question. That was probably from the sample questions. And
that was from the sample questions. Yeah,
that's right. So it's going to be different for that was public health that I was on, but we do ask about how to assess. I don't recall in my interview, it's been 10 years now, or if they asked me about assessment. But I think nowadays, in 10 years, things have come a long way. So they do want to know how you assess students. And I will say that that's not my most important question for me personally, but the other faculty members must think that. I mean, I assess students in multiple ways. I personally like to assess in different ways because everybody has different strengths, and some people fear tests and other people are not as strong writers. And I do think writing can assess something that other types of tests just don't really get at. So I don't know. Isabella or Laura, do you have a better answer about what you want to hear about in assessment and about assessment?
I don't know if I'm the best person to answer this. Our institution is going through HLC, Higher Learning Commission accreditation. So we're all about assessment in the past year or what have you, right? So these are things that do happen and that do matter. It might crop up as a question, because I feel that also like the times are kind of moving that way. There's more accountability in general in colleges. Now that I'm in this partial administrative role, I'm seeing it more and more across the board. So it might be something that you might want to prepare. Just, you don't have to go in depth into it, but yeah, just this idea that, you not only assess your students in different ways, but that you're very interested in, if you think about it, we do assessment as educators all the time, right? You're constantly tweaking your class, you're tweaking your syllabus, you're trying to see, well, this activity didn't work, let me fix it in this way to see if my students will take to it better next time. or next iteration of the course. So you do have an idea of how to do assessment. You just kind of have to know how to articulate it, I guess, and present it to the search committee if this were to come up.
I would also say that, that's the key. It's the multiple means of assessment, right? It's recognizing that not all students do well on testing. Not all students are good writers based on their level of preparation. And so just the fact that you're using multiple modes, even things like, one of the things that I have done recently based on advice from a colleague is to include art-based assignments. And I'm not grading them on their art because, I'm a terrible artist. I would hate if someone graded me on my art in an anthropology class. But we do, create a primate. So think about a sea primate, a sea chimp, or a desert chimp, or a snow chimp, and draw that chimp using what you know about natural selection, what you know about adaptation, like what types of things. And you get, the artists love this, right? You get like these crazy digital awesome things. You get mermaid chimps. And as long as they can explain it, right, explain the adaptation, it demonstrates that they're showing, it demonstrates an understanding of the sort of the forces of evolution, right, at work. So bringing in ideas like that, right? You might grade them on discussions, or you might grade them on, just a number of different ways, getting past the old, multiple choice essay stuff, which doesn't, our students come to us with a lot of educational trauma, and that's something you can do research on. The school to prison pipeline, right, which I'm sure Sean will talk about. So there is a lot of educational trauma for our students, and often it has to do with assessment, right? So finding ways that are creative and different, that allow for students to show their knowledge, I think shows that you are an equity-minded educator. Any last questions?
Yeah, we're almost out of time.
I have a quick question. I was wondering if folks don't mind sharing during the time when you were adjuncting, sort of what else, if anything, did you do to sort of like just maintain a livelihood, or were you able to as an adjunct only?
Yeah, I worked. I was married, and but I did maintain a livelihood. I actually switched to adjuncting because I was already working a part-time job and I was bored with that part-time job. And I said to myself, well, what can I do with a PhD in anthropology part-time? And adjuncting was the only thing I could think of. And then I started doing it and I loved it. And that's when I eventually made it the career. But to answer your question, I think I was probably making $26,000 a year, and that was 10 years ago. If I, I live in Berks County in Pennsylvania, which is rural. If you ever know about the Amish people, that's where I live. It's right next to Lancaster. So 26 is, could be worse. And I certainly wouldn't live in California on 26. And can you live on 26? No, but yeah.
Was that with both incomes together or just from adjuncting?
No, just what I was making at my various ones. That's when I did my tax at the end of the year. It was about 26,000. I was like, oh, all right, I made 26,000, but I wasn't working full time. And I can't say that I did volunteer for a lot of extra stuff, as Laura said you should do. Only because you're already just pulled in so many other directions, and many of you have to. So I understand that if you don't have.
Yeah, Yeah,
all those other
it's not
volunteer
easy
experience.
to do
Not
all those
easy.
other things.
No,
And, you know, a lot of part-time faculty are, you know, what we call freeway flyers, right? So they're driving on the freeway from college to college all day. Right
Mhm.
now we're generally online, but it's not easy.
nope.
Yeah.
As an adjunct with my second, I taught up to 37 weeks. And then 4 weeks after she was born, I was back in the classroom because, I mean, I had to make money. And there was no maternity leave if you're an adjunct. So I had to contribute to my family. So, yeah. But I liked it too, because being a parent, sometimes you want to get away from your family. And being a new mother, sometimes you wanted at least one night a week. That was a 1 night a week class. It was like one of those 4-hour, it was one of these fast classes that with a cohort that's done in 7 weeks, and you meet for 4 hours at night. So I would leave the baby with my husband and get out of the house.
So I'd love to talk for another hour, but our session's over. Here are our email addresses. Please reach out to us at any time. We also have a list of mentors on our SAC website, I believe. Ian, do we still have a list of mentors? Oh, Guru?
It hasn't been updated because I don't have access to a updated list. But if I receive one, I will be sure to update it.
Okay, just so you all know, there are, there are other folks as well to reach out to. And we are happy to answer any questions for all of you at any time.
Yes, don't be shy, reach out.
Yep, that's what we're here for. That's why we love SAC so much, because everybody's so nice. Hey, Ian, I have another question. Does anybody know why I'm not listed as a member for SAC? This is completely off the topic.
Maybe you and Ian can talk about that over email. Okay. All right.
Sorry.
That's all right. Okay, thanks everyone. We'll see you later. Come to my Jackbox games. We're going to play games at 6 o'clock. It's really fun. You'll laugh, I promise. Serotonin boost. See you then.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye.